I sat across from my mother in a coffee shop, watching her hands shake as she stirred her coffee for what felt like the 100th time. She wouldn't look at me. Behind me, through the big window, I could see my dad's car parked across the street. He was too ashamed to come inside. And me? I was finally enjoying the moment I'd spent the last year and a half planning. "You should have just asked us," Mom whispered, her voice so quiet I could barely hear her. "We didn't realize you'd take it this far." I set my coffee down carefully. "You didn't realize," I said, "because you never asked." That moment right there was the result of a carefully planned revenge that began the day I discovered something that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. But before I show you how I got here, you need to understand what broke me first. My name is Ashton. I'm 26 years old now, but this story starts when I was 18, the year I was supposed to start college and change my life. I come from what looked like a well-off family. My dad, Thomas, worked as a money advisor, helping people manage their savings. My mom, Victoria, ran a business planning fancy parties and events. We lived in a big 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everyone and everyone pretended everything was perfect. I was the oldest of 2 children. My younger brother, Andrew, was born 5 years after me. While I grew up pretty independent, doing my own laundry at 9, making my own breakfast by 10, Andrew became what you might call the golden child, the favorite. By the time I turned 13, I could see the pattern clearly. I made the honor roll at school. Andrew failed math twice, and my parents hired an expensive private tutor who cost $300 an hour. I never asked them to do that for me. I didn't ask for much of anything. I worked part-time at 16, bought my own laptop, paid for my own school supplies. It wasn't that I was trying to be a hero. It was just the way things were. I was the capable one, the responsible one, the one who wouldn't break. Andrew, on the other hand, was fragile, sensitive, misunderstood. He wanted to be a musician. My parents spent $40,000 on guitar lessons, studio time, and equipment. He never finished a single song. He wanted to be a photographer. $15,000 on cameras and editing software. He took pictures of his shoes. But here's the thing about being the responsible child in a family: nobody thinks you need protection. When I was 17, my parents sat me down in our formal living room. I remember thinking someone had died. That's how serious they looked. "Ashton," my dad began, adjusting his glasses, "we want to talk to you about college." My mom smiled. It was the kind of smile that told me they'd practiced this conversation. "We've been setting aside money for both you and Andrew," she said. "We want to make sure you don't finish college with a mountain of debt. We want to give you a head start in life." I felt something loosen in my chest. A future. A clear path forward. "We've created a college fund," my dad continued. "About $85,000. It's been growing for the last 12 years. When you turn 18, it's yours." $85,000. That was more money than I'd ever imagined having. That was freedom. That was not working 3 jobs while trying to study. That was peace of mind. I thanked them. I actually cried. I thought they finally saw me. I thought they finally understood that I was worthy of their investment and support. I was so stupid. Looking back now, there were warning signs, red flags I ignored because I wanted so badly to believe in them. 2 months before I turned 18, my parents started mentioning Andrew's future more and more. "He's so artistic," Mom said over dinner. "He just needs the right opportunity." "Musicians need money to develop their skills," Dad added, looking at me. "It's different from a regular education." I nodded. I understood, or I thought I did. I was still excited when my 18th birthday came. I had my acceptance letter from State University. I had a scholarship offer. I had campus visits scheduled. I had a future planned, 3 years studying engineering, then a career at a tech company. Stability, success, everything I'd worked for. The day before my birthday, I asked my parents when I could access the college fund. My mother hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "We need to talk about something," my dad said. He was in his office. My mom wasn't there. That was the second sign something was wrong. I sat down. I already knew. I don't know how, but I knew something bad was coming. Andrew is getting married, he said. Of all the things I expected to hear, that wasn't it. Andrew was 19. He'd been dating his girlfriend, Monica, for only 8 months. Married? I repeated. Dad, he just met her last year. They're in love, he said. Like that explained everything. Like love made up for the fact that my brother was a 20-year-old who'd changed college majors 4 times and still lived in our parent house. Okay, I said slowly. Congratulations to them. But what does that have to do with my college fund? My dad took off his glasses. He did this when he was about to say something he knew was wrong. Monica's parents want a big wedding, he said. They're talking about 500 guests. A fancy country club location. Weddings are expensive, Ashton. You know that. Your mother has been planning events for 15 years. I felt the room spin. You're not, I said. You're not about to tell me what I think you're about to tell me. It's a compromise, he said. We're not using the entire fund. Just a portion. How much? He didn't answer. How much, Dad? $63,000, he said quietly. $63,000. That was 75% of my future. That was my entire first and second year of college. That was half my engineering degree. Absolutely not, I said. No, you promised me. You promised. We promised to help you, he interrupted. And we are. You're smart, Ashton. You'll get scholarships. You'll get loans. You can work. You offered to pay, I said. My voice was shaking. You specifically said you didn't want me to finish college with debt. Those were your exact words. I know what I said, he replied. And that was the moment something in me changed forever. Not anger, something deeper. Something that would never heal. Why? I asked, why would you do this? Because, my mother said from the doorway, she'd been listening the whole time, your brother needs us. This is an important family moment. Monica's parents are covering their half, and it's traditional for both sides to pay equally. I needed you, I said. I need this money. My mother's face softened. That was worse than if she'd been angry. You'll be fine, she said. You're so capable, Ashton. You always figure things out. She meant it as a compliment. She genuinely thought she was being nice by pointing out how strong I was, by using my strength against me. That was the first blow, but it wasn't the last. For the next 3 months, I watched my parents plan my brother's wedding like it was the event of the century. Food tastings, flower arrangements, a custom ice sculpture shaped like swans. They even took out a loan to cover their half of the costs. A loan. They took out a loan for Andrew's wedding, but expected me to take loans for my education. I tried to explain how unfair this was during a family dinner in July. This wasn't the deal, I said carefully. I've been counting on that money. I've been working toward it. I've done everything you asked, kept my grades up, stayed out of trouble, worked part-time since I was 16, and you're telling me that none of that matters because Andrew is in love? That's not fair, Andrew said, which was rich coming from someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. Not fair. I repeated, Andrew, you don't even know what fair means. Mom and Dad spent $40,000 on your guitar lessons. You don't even play anymore. That's not relevant, my dad said firmly. It's completely relevant, I shot back. You're teaching both of us that the person who acts helpless gets everything and the person who's responsible gets nothing. My mother started crying, not because she understood how badly she'd hurt me, but because I'd made her uncomfortable. And just like that, I became the bad guy. My dad's voice turned cold. That's enough. You're being selfish. Your brother is getting married. A little support would be nice. Support. I said, I'll support his marriage, but I won't help him do it with my future. I left the table. I left the house that night, and I spent the next 18 months planning exactly how I would make them regret every single choice they'd made. The turning point came 6 months after the wedding, which, by the way, ended up costing nearly $120,000 when you added in the loans my parents took out. I was attending community college, working 2 jobs to pay for my classes. I lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. Every dollar I earned went to either school or rent. I was sleeping 5 hours a night. I was exhausted all the time. But I was also becoming very, very good at digging for information. I was doing my taxes that year and needed my social security number. I asked my dad for some old documents he still had from when I was a kid. While he was gathering them, I noticed something on his desk, a financial statement with my name on it. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The college fund, the one supposedly emptied by the wedding, still had $14,000 in it. I stared at that number for a long time. $14,000. Money that was supposed to be mine. Money my parents had sworn was gone. Money that had been sitting in an account, earning interest while I worked myself to death. But that wasn't even the worst discovery. I started asking questions, careful questions. I told my dad I wanted to understand how the fund worked. Maybe I could access what was left over. He got defensive, then dodgy. Eventually, he gave me the account information just to get me to stop asking. What I discovered in the next week changed everything. The college fund was a special type of savings account for education. My dad was in charge of it, and according to the account history, he hadn't just taken out $63,000 for the wedding. He'd been making loans to my brother for the past 2 years. Small amounts, $500 here, $2,000 there, for Andrew's apartment, his living costs, his failed music equipment. Those loans were listed in the account as withdrawals. They were never paid back. So, when my dad told me the fund was empty, he was lying. He was hiding my brother's debt from me. I immediately hired a lawyer. A good one. I paid for the first meeting with my credit card, knowing it would take me months to pay off, but I needed to know where I stood legally. The lawyer, her name was Rosalind, looked over the documents for about 30 minutes, then she looked at me. "You have a case," she said. "This fund was set up for you, but your dad mismanaged it, especially the hidden withdrawals that look like personal loans rather than education costs. That's a breach of responsibility." "What does that mean in plain English?" I asked. "It means," Rosalind said, taking off her glasses, "your dad had a legal duty to manage that money responsibly and for your benefit. He failed to do that. He instead used it for his own purposes and lied about it. You could sue him for the full amount plus extra for damages." I remember sitting in that office, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not hope, possibility. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not about winning money in court. It's about making people feel what they made you feel. And I wasn't interested in just getting money anymore. I was interested in the truth coming out. So I told Rosalind to hold off on the lawsuit. I had a different plan. For the next 6 months, I became someone my parents didn't recognize. I called my mother and apologized for my outburst at dinner. I said I'd been stressed about school and work, and I shouldn't have taken it out on them. I asked if we could start over. She was thrilled, relieved even. I could hear it in her voice. She'd been carrying some guilt, but not enough to actually change anything or make it right. I started going home for Sunday dinners again. I was pleasant, interested in Andrew's new job, a job my dad had helped him get at his company. I asked about my mom's business. I was the perfect son, and while they were letting me back in, I was gathering information. I learned that my parents were planning for retirement, maybe 5 or 6 years away. My dad had investments, a pension, stock accounts. Everything was documented, organized. One Sunday, when my mom was showing me wedding pictures on her phone, I asked if I could use the bathroom. I knew the code to their home office door. I'd watched my dad punch it in hundreds of times. It took me 4 minutes to photograph every financial document on his desk. I got copies of his investment statements, his retirement accounts, his bank statements, everything. I brought those documents to Rosalind. "This is good," she said, reviewing them, "but what are you looking for specifically?" "I want to understand his complete financial picture," I said. "I want to know if he even has the money to pay back what he owes me." She gave me a look that suggested she understood I was building something bigger than a lawsuit. What I discovered was eye-opening. My dad's total worth was about $740,000. He had significant investments, multiple accounts, cash he could access, and according to his current rate of saving, he'd have nearly $2 million by retirement. He hadn't paid me back because he didn't want to, not because he couldn't. That difference mattered. I spent the next 3 months documenting everything. I created a timeline of all the withdrawals. I gathered every email about the wedding fund. I even got copies of the wedding bills, which showed that my parents paid far less than they'd claimed. They'd told me the fund was empty. The actual cost of their half was $37,000. They'd stolen $26,000 from my future and lied about what it was for. And then something even better happened. My dad called me into his office one evening. I went in expecting another conversation, but instead, he said something that would change everything. "Son, I want to talk to you about the college fund situation," he began. My heart stopped. "Your mother and I have been discussing it, and we feel bad about how things happened. We weren't thinking clearly when Andrew got engaged, and we made a decision that hurt you unfairly." I waited. I knew a but was coming. "But we're not in a position to repay the full amount right now. The wedding was expensive, and we took on debt. However, we want to make it right eventually. When we retire, we'll have more money available." "Eventually," I repeated. "How long is eventually?" 5 to 7 years, he said. "Maybe longer, depending on the economy." 5 to 7 years. By then, I would have finished my degree. I would have piled up student debt. The damage would be done. "Okay," I said. "Thank you for being honest about that." And then I smiled. That smile should have scared him, but it didn't, because he believed I was the kind of person who would accept scraps from my own family. He was very, very wrong. It took 8 weeks to set everything in place. I worked with Rosalind to file a formal complaint with the state's financial board about my dad's mismanagement of the college fund. I included detailed proof of the false withdrawals to my brother, the lies about the fund's status, and the breach of his legal duty to manage it properly. At the same time, I submitted a detailed story to a financial fraud podcast I discovered. The producers were interested immediately. This wasn't just a family betrayal. It was evidence of financial wrongdoing that violated state law. The podcast episode aired on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, my dad had received a call from his company's legal department. By Thursday, the state's financial board had opened a formal investigation. By Friday, my dad's boss called him into a meeting that lasted 6 hours. He called me that evening. "What did you do?" His voice was thin, panicked. "What do you mean?" I said calmly. "I was sitting at my desk doing homework. A complaint was filed with the state about the college fund. They're saying I misused a trust account. They're investigating whether I've done this with other clients. Ashton, my job is at risk." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "You did this," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I did what, Dad?" "I told the truth to people whose job it is to make sure money managers are held accountable. If the truth is damaging, maybe that says something about what you did, not what I did." The line went quiet. "There are legal options," I continued, "if you want to fix this. Rosalind has a proposal. She can send it to your lawyer." "You got a lawyer," he said flatly. I did. A very good one. 2 hours later, my mother called. She was crying. "How could you do this to your father?" she asked. "His career could be over." "His career is at risk because he stole from me," I said. "Not because I reported it. There's a difference." "It was one mistake," she begged. "It wasn't a mistake," I said. "A mistake is doing something without understanding the results." Dad understood exactly what he was doing. He just thought he'd never have to answer for it. The investigation took 3 months. During that time, the podcast episode went viral. It was shared all over Reddit, social media, and financial advisor forums. My dad's company received complaints from clients wondering if they could trust him. The legal department launched their own investigation. He tried to settle with me, offered me $60,000 to sign a paper saying I wouldn't talk about it and to drop the complaint with the state. Rosalind laughed. "Counter at $300,000, she said. "That covers the original $85,000 plus interest, plus the years of extra education costs because he made you work 3 jobs plus damages for emotional harm." He didn't accept, so the state's investigation continued. By August, they determined that my dad had indeed broken his legal duty. They issued a formal order prohibiting him from managing any trust accounts. They fined him $75,000 for financial wrongdoing. His company decided not to fire him. They couldn't without admitting their own mistake in keeping him, but they removed him from his position handling client money. He was moved to a position doing tax preparation with a 50% pay cut. His career was basically ended. When the financial penalties were announced, there were news articles. The local paper ran a story about well-known financial advisor punished for trust violation. His reputation, which had been built over 20 years, disappeared in weeks. And my dad had to sit with that. 3 months after the state's final ruling, my dad asked to meet with me. I didn't want to go, but my mother called and begged me to hear him out. That's how I ended up in that coffee shop, watching my mother's hands shake as she stirred her coffee for the 100th time. My dad started by apologizing. It felt practiced. I was wrong, he said. I made a poor decision that affected you unfairly, and I handled it dishonestly afterward. For that, I'm sorry. You're sorry you got caught, I said. That's not the same thing. He flinched. I'm sorry for the results. He changed his words. I'm sorry your career was damaged. My career was damaged because I reported financial wrongdoing. Your career was damaged because you committed it. My mother tried to jump in. Ashton, he's losing the house. And there it was, the real reason they wanted to see me. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. That must be hard. We wanted to ask if you'd consider dropping the formal complaint, my dad said. If the complaint was withdrawn, the state might be willing to reconsider how severe the penalties are. No, I said, I'm not doing that. You've already won, my mother said. You've made your point. Can't you just let it go? Let it go. I repeated, Mom, I didn't do this to make a point. I did this to make sure it never happens again. That complaint is public record now. Other people know what happened. If the board wants to reduce the penalties, that's their decision. But I won't be part of covering this up. My dad's face hardened. The moment of vulnerability passed. You're going to destroy this family, he said. No, I replied. You destroyed this family. I'm just making sure you have to face the results of those decisions. And that's when something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, not regret, defeat. The realization that he couldn't charm his way out of this. He couldn't minimize it or explain it away. He couldn't call me selfish and make me back down. What do you want from us? He asked finally. I want you to admit what you did, I said. Not to apologize for the results. To actually understand that you took something from me that can't be replaced. Money, time, trust. And you did it not because you had no choice, but because you chose your favorite son over your responsible one. I never chose Andrew over you, my mother said. You did that by not choosing me, I replied. And that was a choice. They didn't respond. They couldn't, because I was right. I finished my coffee. I'm going to finish my degree. I said, I'm going to graduate without the debt you promised to prevent. And I'm going to do it in spite of you, not because of you. And every time you wonder what I might have become if you'd kept your promise, remember that it was never about the money. It was about being worth the investment. I stood up. My mother reached for my hand. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay and hear more. I wanted her to fully understand how badly she'd failed as a mother. But I was done. I'd gotten what I came for. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't give me back 18 months of sleepless nights working 2 jobs. Sorry doesn't erase the lies. My father spoke quietly. What happens now? Now, I said, we become people who used to be family. That was 2 years ago. My dad lost the house. They managed to avoid bankruptcy, but barely. They're getting divorced now. My mother says she can't look at him without remembering what he did. My brother finally moved out and is working at a hardware store. Turns out, having your parents' entire world collapse because they spoiled you is good motivation to become independent. And me? I graduated top of my class with a degree in computer science. No student debt. I'm working for a tech startup making 6 figures and building the life I was supposed to have all along. Some people say I went too far, that I should have forgiven them. That family is family. But here's what I learned. Family isn't just about being related by blood. It's a choice to protect and invest in people who matter. It's honesty. It's fairness. It's being able to look your children in the eye and know they can trust you to keep your word. My parents made their choice, and I made mine. So, I want to ask you, was I wrong? Do you think I should have forgiven them? Should I have accepted the settlement offer? Should I have put family loyalty over personal justice? Because I genuinely don't know if I made the right choice. I just know it was the only choice I could live with. If you've experienced betrayal like this, if you've been the responsible one in a family that took advantage of that, you're not alone. Thank you for listening. And remember, your family's expectations don't override your right to honesty. I'll see you in the next one.